Some other news here. Iraq says U.S. troops leaving Syria can't stay in the country. The Iraqi military saying the American service members can only pass through as they travel somewhere else. Joining us now is Henri Barkey, a Cohen professor of international relations at Lehigh University, an adjunct senior fellow for Middle East studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Henri, what's the significance of Iraq's stance?
Well, it just complicates the United States position and what the United States wants to do. At least, let me put it this way, what President Trump wants to do. In a way, you can even say it's a slap on America's face because, you know, the withdrawal from Syria was going to be complicated, and this is going to be makes it more complicated in the sense that if the United States wanted to keep troops to make sure that ISIS doesn't come back, it will not have that option anymore. So it is actually a setback for Trump, and unfortunately, it's a result of his hasty decision and not having coordinated with the Iraqis in advance. I mean, the Iraqis are a little bit sensitive to the fact that they don't want to appear that the United States uses them willy-nilly whenever it needs to put troops or move troops across. And, you know, Iraq will say, look, we are a sovereign, independent country, and therefore, please, you know, consult with us in advance. And clearly, the United States did not do it in this particular case.
What do we know about what President Trump wants to do? You mentioned it is making it a little bit more unclear at this point, but what is his end goal when it comes to Middle East policy?
Listen, your guess is as good as mine, unfortunately. And I mean, what happened in the last couple of weeks has shocked everybody, as you can see in Washington. I think there probably are very, very few people in the U.S. government at the moment that even back Mr. Trump's decisions. I mean, he's the president, so you have to go along with what he orders. But this really came as a shock and as a terrible surprise. And look, basically the reaction has been uniformly, United States and abroad, especially in Europe and in the Middle East, negative. So we don't really know what he wants to do, in the sense that he talks about removing troops from Syria. There were only 1,000 troops that were doing an amazing job of containing ISIS, and he removes them without any plan, and then he puts troops in Saudi Arabia at the same time. So he's being contradictory. And then we heard yesterday that now he may want to keep or control the oil fields, which of course is a terrible idea, because you've been listening to things that the reason the United States is in the Middle East is because of oil and doesn't care about anything else. And Trump is essentially validating that terrible idea about the United States. So, look, unfortunately, we have a president who doesn't know the Middle East, who doesn't know much about foreign policy.
So, Henri, to that end, does this further destabilize the region there in the Middle East?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
How?
Just imagine. I mean, for one thing, if ISIS were to come back, I mean, there are the ISIS prisoners. ISIS had gone underground in Syria and Iraq. We already are seeing ISIS attacking Kurdish forces in the rear, in Raqqa, in Hasaka. Also, so the chances are they will come back in much greater strength. Second, you are going to have now fighting between Kurds and Turks in Syria for a long time to come. Don't expect the Kurds to take this reverse quietly. They have to retreat because the Turkish army is too powerful at the moment, but they will essentially wage a guerrilla war. Third is the fact that now the Iranians and the Syrians and the Russians have the upper hand, and they are going to do everything in their power to undermine the American position, such as it is in the region. So, from all respects, this is going to create more uncertainty. And look, we can sit down here and say X, Y, and Z will happen, but let's face it, when you make such decisions like this, you always have unintended consequences that tend to be far more dramatic and that you did not predict. So in that sense,
Yeah.
there's still a lot more to come, I think, and unfortunately, a lot more is probably going to be very negative.
And obviously bipartisan backlash to President Trump for this move. That's Henri Barkey, Cohen, professor of international relations at Lehigh University, and adjunct senior fellow for Middle East studies at the Council on Foreign Relations. Thank you to Henri.